Good afternoon, guys, and welcome back. Today officially marks 1 week out from the Mr Olympia 2024, so I figured I would come to you today and do my Olympia picks for the year. Currently just out doing my cardio, so as soon as I get back, I'm going to get all set up, have a look at the list, and I will let you know what my thoughts are. But for now, let me get on with this walk, and I'll see you there. Okay, guys, so back from the walk. So let's check out this competitor list and have a look at who's competing and where I think they're going to land. Now, there are a couple of caveats here that we'll get to with people who are qualified, but maybe they're having visa issues or things like that, people who've dropped out. For instance, Tony Burton has qualified, but he's already announced that he's not competing this year. So I would probably have him in my top 10, but he's not competing this year, so we're not going to be including him in this list. What we're going to do, going to go from 10th through to 1st. I'm going to give some explanations as to why I think people are going to land in those spots. I'd be curious to see if you guys agree or disagree. Like, obviously, this is just my list. This also is not necessarily who I want to place in these placings, but it's how I think it is most likely going to land based on what I've seen in updates and people's recent showings, etc. So let's get cracking with number 10. In number 10, I have William Bonac. Now, Bonac has been as high as 2nd at the Olympia in 2019 to Brandon Curry. He's also won the Arnold Classic. However, I don't think the Bonac that we have at the moment, while still absolutely insane, I don't think he is quite the Bonac that he used to be. He did look really good at his last showing, but even then, that was not the Bonac of old, in my opinion. And I think you'll see as we go along this list, there's just some people that I think are looking slightly better than him. But let me get into a little bit of why I think that he will place down here. Like I said, he looks insane. His quads are ridiculous. His arms still crazy. His conditioning still is good, I think. At his last show, his conditioning was still pretty on point. Again, I think it wasn't quite as sharp as he has been in years past, but still good. However, his midsection, as he's getting older, I think it is getting a little thicker, and as that's happening, I think that's making his chest look a little shallower, which just throws off his silhouette slightly. Now, I could be wrong about this. He could come in and place higher, but this is where I have him for the moment. And so yeah, in number 10, I've got William Bonac. Now, in at number 9, we have got Rafael Brandao. So Rafael's coming off 3rd place at the Arnold Ohio this year, and then also a win down in Brazil. His physique is just, it's so pretty to look at. He's like if you just photoshopped a classic guy to be like 30 pounds heavier. His quads are crazy, and he's really got no weak poses. He's one of the few bodybuilders who there's really no pose you can look at and be like, he looks great but this pose, he looks great but that pose. Like he's just solid across the board. I think his issue is he does need to be a bit bigger, and even though he has really improved his size lately, I think with that he has lost a little bit of that sharpness. There was a lot of talk when he won Brazil about he should have potentially lost to Tony Burton. I personally did have Tonio winning that show because of the disparity in conditioning, particularly from behind. But with that said, I think his shape, particularly if we're looking at who I have in number 10, William Bonac, I think structurally he will stand out next to him and he will draw the eye a bit more. But I don't think he quite has the size or potentially the consistency with conditioning to move up further than where I have him in the number 9 spot. Okay, guys, this next pick is potentially my most controversial pick. And there is a little caveat to it, but first of all, let me just say, at number 8, I do have former Mr Olympia, Brandon Curry. Now, huge asterisk next to this one. I only have Brandon this low because we haven't seen anything from him. It's hard to know how to place him when he hasn't shown his physique really. I know he's posted some training videos and his upper body looks huge, but his upper body always looks ridiculous. Like from the upper body, he could still win the show, but his legs really do pull him down. It's not just the size, but it's also the detail. That, in particular last year, and I know he was really ill last year, but they just didn't have the detail through the quads and especially through the hamstrings and glutes. Now, if he does bring the detail back in his quads, because we have seen it when he won the Arnold, when he won the Olympia, he did have that. He had that fullness and he had that detail in his legs, and it really balanced out his top to bottom symmetry. Like if we get peak Brandon again, he could, in my opinion, be up as high as 3rd maybe. But at the moment, again, because what I'm going off is how did he look last time he competed? who was around him placing wise and how have those guys improved? Where do I see him compared to what they now look like? So I have Brandon Curry in 8th. Now on to number 7. In 7th place, I have Hunter Labrada. Now, I love Hunter's physique. I think he's absolutely huge. Always has this kind of almost deceptive quality about his physique, in that because he's so well balanced, when you see him by himself, he doesn't look as big as he actually is. And then you see him next to other guys and he's just huge. Quads are insane. His arms are insane. His back has seriously improved. And despite what some people seem to be saying online, I think when he competed in Italy, his conditioning was sick. Maybe a little on the flat side, but in my opinion, it wasn't even close. I know you have some people saying that they think Presti should have won. I really think that is just the Italian fans backing a home guy, but no. Now, in my opinion, what's holding Hunter back is there does seem to be a little issue with the midsection. Now, I don't think it's as bad as some people are making it out to be. I really don't think it's throwing his physique off that much. But in my opinion, in poses like the side tricep and the front lat spread, it's not maybe as tight as I would like it to be. And it is a little noticeable. I don't really think the pec tear is a particular issue, to be perfectly honest. But I do think the midsection is something that potentially needs to be addressed. And yeah, if he can get that lights out conditioning and get the peak right with the combination of that really tight conditioning that they got in Italy with more of the fullness that we've seen from him in the past, then I think he has the potential to move up higher. But for now, I've got him in 7th. Now moving on to 6th place. Again, potentially controversial pick here, but for a different reason. In 6th place at the 2024 Mr Olympia, I actually have Martin Fitzwater. Now, this is, I believe, Martin's first Olympia, so having him as high as 6 is, it's a pretty bold call on my part, but I honestly do just think he's that good. Martin's physique has exploded in the last couple of years, and not in a way of he put on a dramatic amount of size, but the amount of size he put on was perfect. It didn't blow his waist up seemingly at all, and it really enhanced this kind of bubbly round quality that his muscles have, where you don't need to add a huge amount of scale weight to really make him pop so much more than he already did. His quads are ridiculous. They sweep so much and they are so separated. His hamstrings from the back and from the side are nuts. His midsection is tight. He's pulling a sort of semi-vacuum in the front double. His arms are so much fuller than they have been in the past. His V-taper is wild. I am a big fan of Martin's physique. Honestly, one of my favorite physiques in the circuit right now. Martin's conditioning at the New York Pro was crazy as well. And he was even better than he was in Detroit, I think. Now, it is his debut, so it's possible that the classic Olympia thing of you've got to earn your stripes happens. We all remember when Bonac had his debut and he should have placed so much higher than he did. And if Martin shows up how he has been showing up, or even better, I absolutely think that this is on the cards for him. So in 6th place, I have Martin Fitzwater. Now, I very much see this Olympia as a battle of two halves. I see the battle for 12 to 6 being really tight, and I see the battle for 5 to 1 being really tight. Another caveat I do have, if Behruz is able to make it to the Olympia and gets his visa, I would have him probably in 6, and then just have everyone in my list shuffle down 1. But as it stands right now, there's been no announcement of him getting that visa, so I'm not counting him in this. Coming on to number 5 then. In 5th, I have Nick Walker. Nick has placed 5th and then 3rd at the Olympia. He's also won the Arnold Classic. He placed 2nd to Sampson at the 2023 Arnold Classic. I probably would have had Nick higher than this before the New York Pro. I obviously was still impressed with him at the New York Pro. He's still Nick Walker. He's still phenomenal. Size-wise, I think he's improved, but his waist has taken a hit for me. Not in a distension way. I really don't think he has a gut at all, but the actual thickness of his obliques has quite noticeably increased. Now, if they can somehow find a way to pull that back in, then who knows where Nick could place. Nick could win. He is that good. His arms are probably the best in bodybuilding right now. I mean, I think it's him or Crizzo. I do think he still needs a bit more quad sweep from the front, but his side leg is gnarly and his legs from the rear are possibly the best on stage. His hamstrings in the back double and back lat spread are just, they don't even make sense. He will, I'm sure, have that sort of trademark Nick Walker conditioning. Now, we've seen him really nail it, you know, when he won the Arnold, when he won his first New York Pro, because he does have those really nice shaped abs. If he can keep a really good control of it and keep his obliques in tight the whole time, then he could move up. But based on what I saw at the New York Pro, that's what I'm judging this off. And so I would have him currently in 5th. But I mean, we know what Nick Walker's like. He seems to thrive off being an underdog. So I would not be surprised if this lights a fire under him and he comes in better than we've ever seen him. Right then, moving on to 4th place, I have got Andrew Jacked. Now, anyone in this top 5 I think could win. And I'll probably say it with all of them. I think Andrew Jacked has got what it takes to win the Olympia. I really do. His front shots are not just, in my opinion, the best in the show. I think they're some of the best in the history of bodybuilding. Like, he is insane in those shots. His ab and thigh, I think, is up there again with Sean Roden's as one of the best of all time. Andrew Jack's problem comes really from his side shots and his back shots. Now, his back itself is great. Like, there's really not much of a problem with his back. It could use a little more thickness, but it's really wide. His problem from the back is detail. He doesn't quite have the crispness through the hamstrings and the glutes and the back that he does from the front. He also does not have the thickness in the hamstrings that he has in his quads from the front. So his symmetry top to bottom is kind of thrown off in that way. It's not as drastic as someone like Brandon's, but it is still quite noticeable. For me, his biggest drawback are his side shots. In the side chest, he just doesn't seem to have that thickness that other people do. You know, Nick Walker's side chest is just dense. It just, there's no spaces, right? Whereas with Andrew, there kind of are. His side chest makes him look a little long. Now, granted, he is like 6'3", so he is long. And really, I think this is more of a posing issue than an actual muscularity issue. Now, that shot that he hits with his legs straight and he's sort of turned to the front is beautiful. It's like one of my favorite shots in bodybuilding right now. But it's not a side tricep. So I'd love to see him nail those poses, and then we can kind of know, actually, does he have the thickness or does he need to work on those things? And even in the most muscular, although it's a front shot, you know, next to someone like Nick, Hunter, even Martin, who's like not quite as dense as those other guys, but still has filled his frame out more, Andrew still looks a little stringy in the most muscular. Again, I think it's just because of his bigger frame. He is just a tall, long guy. But I think in that pose, either the pose needs tweaking or he might just need a bit more muscle there. But that is why in 4th, I've got Andrew Jacked. Okay, guys, moving on to the top 3. And this is where I think things could potentially get really interesting. So coming in at 3rd, I actually have current reigning Mr Olympia, Derek Lunsford. Now, Derek, in my opinion, has maybe the craziest back double biceps we've seen since Phil Heath. It is insane. It's mind-boggling. It doesn't even make sense. But from the front, his conditioning does not match what it is from the back. His conditioning from the back is dry, gnarly, it's crazy. But it's not the same story when he turns around. Now, if we take a look at Derek, his shape is just insane. Like in the front relaxed, front double, he opens up, he looks like a cobra. Just those lats flaring out into that tiny little waist. But his quads from the front do leave something to be desired. And his hardness through the arms also leaves something to be desired. I think from the side, he is good. I don't love his side tricep, but his side chest I think is very good. And then his back shots, his back double is just unreal. His most muscular, shape-wise and muscularity-wise, I think is really good, but he still suffers from that issue of not having the conditioning through the chest, through the abs, through the arms and delts that other competitors on the stage will have. Now, he could have improved this, and then that will shut me up and he'll win again. I mean, he could have improved this in his off-season and come back and win again and shut everyone up. But again, based on his photos, his updates that he's been putting out, how he looked last year, I don't know if he will have that. Now, I will say, if he hasn't sorted the conditioning from the front quite to where we would like it to be, but he has improved his quad sweep from the front, I think that could also be enough to push him from where I have him in 3rd back up to 1st again. But for now, I have Derek Lunsford in 3rd. Now coming in 2nd place, I have Samson Dowder. Now, being completely honest, this is who I would want to win the Olympia. Samson not only is a British bodybuilder, and I'm a British guy pretending to be a bodybuilder, but I think his physique, to me, perfectly represents bodybuilding. He's got ridiculous amounts of size. You know, the man's stepping on stage at 300 pounds. People talk about Samson as if he has this awful conditioning. Guys, he's not Lionel Bayeki at his last show. He's still top 3 in the world. Potentially could win this year. I do have him in second. But his conditioning is not bad. His shape is just, it's so beautiful. It flows so well. It's so balanced. And if you look at how he was posing at the Tsunami Cup in France, he's found a way to pose his back double, which I think, in my opinion, was his weakest shot, in a way that gives him a lot more thickness through the traps and the upper back, which I think will allow him to be much more competitive with Hardy and Derek. Now, I still don't think he's going to beat those two in that pose. I don't think he'll even beat Nick Walker in that pose. But it diminishes the gap between them and allows for his wins in other places to sort of help him pull even further forward, if that makes sense. I think his front shots are stunning. From the side, he's one of the thickest guys on stage. The thing that really helps Samson is not that this shot beats everybody or this shot beats everybody, but that he's like an 8, 9 out of 10 across the board. Whereas somebody like Andrew, who is like a 10 out of 10 in the front double, but like a 7 or 6 out of 10 in the side tricep, gives up something there. So I think that is how he's going to be able to pull ahead of a lot of guys. And in my opinion, I think his appearance at the Tsunami Cup, I think it's the best Samson's ever looked. I really do. His waist was tight. He was pulling vacuums. And at the Arnold, Ohio this year, that was something that he was kind of dinged for, was not having a gut, but just letting go of his midsection and allowing it to relax in between shots. He's really got that under control now, which really adds even more to this kind of exaggerated mass monster with shape silhouette that he has. So that is why in second place I have Samson Dauda. And that means, of course, coming in at number 1, first place and regaining his title of Mr Olympia, I think will be Hadi Choopan. Now, I personally did have Hadi winning the 2023 Olympia. I can see why Derek won, but my personal opinion was that Hadi was overall slightly better than Derek. But the Hadi that turned up to the 2024 Arnold, Ohio was, in my opinion, the best bodybuilder we've seen step foot on stage since Phil Heath. His combination of dense muscle and gnarly conditioning has always been stellar. He's always been the most conditioned guy on whatever stage he's on. But at the Arnold, Hadi fixed the biggest criticism of his physique, which was his shape. He was criticised for being a little too blocky, even though he's got this crazy diced midsection. It's a little thick, guys. It's not super, super tiny. It's always tight. It's always controlled. You will never see Hadi relaxing on his midsection. But from the front, it is a little thicker. It's a little boxy. Until he starts pulling vacuums in his front double and front relaxed at the Arnold, and then suddenly no one has anything to say. I think if we get that Hadi show up again, I don't know that anyone will have made enough improvements to catch that guy. The condition he brings through the chest, from the front, through the abs, we haven't seen that for a long time. Like, he looks like a photo from a magazine in the 90s. And we all know they were photoshopping the photos in the magazines. But yeah, I really think that if Hadi shows up as he did at the Arnold, or potentially even slightly better, then I believe he will do enough to regain his Mr. Olympia crown. But like I said, guys, I really think that any of these top 5 could swap and change, just depending on how they come in. None of it matters until we see them stand on stage next to each other. And we really get to see who is the best bodybuilder in the world. So guys, those are my picks for the top 10 at the 2024 Mr. Olympia. What do you think about it? Do you disagree with some of my picks? Do you agree with some of my picks? Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts and where you would have all of these guys placing. I think we're in for a really, really good show this year. I think the lineup is fantastic and we're in for an absolute war between some of these guys. But until then, guys, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.